We're now live, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Pensions Committee. I'm Tom Biggins, Chair of the Pensions Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else, so that it is clear who is asking to speak and the debate has to be heard by those listening to the audio feed. The Chair will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, members of the committee will be asked to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interests they have in any of the items on the agenda. Everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, are asked to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so those listening know who is speaking. We will now have the roll call and disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any matters to be discussed which is not included in the register of interests, and leave the meeting by switching off their camera and muting their microphone prior to the matter being discussed. I will ask the committee officer to read out each member's name and ask them to confirm presence and confirm if any interests. Tim, please.
Sorry, Chair, I was muted. Councillor Thomas Biggins.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Councillor Chris Mellins.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Brian Williams.
Sorry, present and no interest to declare.
Councillor Ray Evans.
Present and no interest to declare.
Councillor Malcolm Smith.
Present and no interest to declare.
Laura Hoskisson.
Present, no interest to declare.
And Jean Smith.
It sounds like Jean Smith isn't with us.
She is in the meeting. Jean, you're still muted. I think Jean must be having problems at the minute, Chair.
Oh, okay, well, we'll move on, and hopefully Jean will join us in just a moment or two. I'll now ask officers and advisors and others present to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions.
And James Walton, Shropshire Council's Director of Finance, Governance and Insurance, Section 151 Officer and the Pension Scheme Administrator.
Debbie Sharp, Pensions Administration Manager.
Kerry Pulaski, Head of Audit.
Terry Tobin, Grant Thornton, External Audit.
Richard Percival, also from Grant Thornton, External Audit.
Louis Hill, Aon Investment Consultant.
Roger Bartley, Independent Advisor.
Tim, anybody else?
No, that's it, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we turn to the items on the agenda, I'd like to confirm to members that following the motion of Shropshire Council around fossil fuels, I have received the letter from the acting chief executives. Further updates on this will be provided by Michael Marshall from LGPS Central during the meeting. Moving on to the agenda, the first item are apologies and substitutions. Can the committee officer confirm if there are any apologies and substitutions, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Michael Wood, and there are no substitutions.
Very good, thank you. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. This has been dealt with during the initial roll call of the meeting. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of July 2020. I move that the minutes of the Pensions Committee meeting held on the 24th of July 2020 circulated with the agenda papers be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. I will now accept these minutes as a true record unless anyone indicates differently. Okay, well, we'll accept those as a true record. Item 4, public question time. The following 3 public questions have been received. I will ask the Head of Treasury and Pensions to read the questions, and the Director of Finance, Governance and Assurance will give the responses. The first question has been received from Benjamin Christmas.
Thank you, Chair.
Justin, I think you'll read the question out, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions. Question is, industries and companies around the world, big and small, are increasingly aware of the need to transition away from fossil fuels. Some are doing this with financial risk fossil fuels now pose, but many more are facing ethical and moral responsibilities and stepping up to the essential threat facing the world. For companies who understand the science, one aspect of the future is very certain. The world cannot continue to burn fossil fuels. For example, in January 2020, Microsoft set one of the most ambitious carbon commitments put forward by any company. Microsoft will be carbon negative by 2030 and will remove from the environment more carbon than they have emitted since their founding by 2050. To reduce Scope 1 and 2 emissions, Microsoft is on a path to using renewable energy power for 100% of the day-to-day power of their data centres by the middle of this decade. Furthermore, the company aims to eliminate their dependency on diesel fuels by 2030. The announcement also stated, "We believe it's important to help accelerate the global transition away from fossil fuels." The Shropshire County Pension Fund's defence that almost all companies include an element of fossil fuel consumption on their current operations is true, but a woefully inadequate response to the issue. Top companies are transitioning away from fossil fuels in increasing numbers and with ever more urgent timescales. Shropshire County Pension Fund and or their investment managers can act swiftly when necessary. A recent rebalancing exercise resulted in the combined weighting of BP and Shell dropping from 1% or 0.6% of the total index between March 19 and March 2020. Given the small proportion of the fund represented by these two companies and the very diverse portfolio Shropshire County Pension Fund possesses, it seems perverse to continue to give financial support to BP and Shell, especially in the face of the unfolding climate crisis, the moral responsibilities of all companies and the overwhelming scientific evidence that burning fossil fuels will destroy the planet. Why is Shropshire County Pension Fund so determined to financially support Shell and BP?
Thank you. And the answer, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is James Walton, the Pension Fund Administrator. So the response is Shropshire County Pension Fund delegates investment decisions to its investment managers. One of the managers appointed invests in passive global equities, which tracks the FTSE All World Developed Index, meaning it holds all companies within that index, which include BP and Shell. The fund's active UK equity manager also holds BP and Shell, although these positions have been reduced recently. By investing in BP and Shell, these managers can engage and change company behaviour on behalf of Shropshire County Pension Fund as a shareholder. Shell is taking meaningful steps to upgrade its asset portfolio, cut costs and capital intensity, partly by reducing the number of its refineries. Our UK equity manager sees the group's portfolio transformation from a legacy upstream exploration and production assets to being a key player in the energy transition as one of its key opportunities. They engage the group regularly on this, as they did most recently in July 2020. Shell currently supplies around 3% of the energy the world uses. It has a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions emitted from each unit of energy it sells by 30% by 2035 and by 65% by 2050, partly by reducing the emissions from its operations, but also by changing the mix of energy products. In 2019, the group started setting unconditional targets to reduce its net carbon footprint. The target announced in 2020 was a reduction in emissions of 4% by the end of 2022. The group's net carbon footprint target is consistent with the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement. They have also met several times with BP over the last 12 months to speak with its board, executives and management teams about the group's transition to greener energies. Among other things, they have asked the group to come up with a way to measure overall energy efficiency instead of having a different efficiency metric for each commodity. They also asked the group to link energy transformation directly to group strategy and pay, as well as report more clearly on its climate impacts. In February 2020, BP announced its carbon neutral goals to be achieved by 2050. They will learn more about the group's plans on how it will achieve this target in updates from the company this month. They plan to understand more thoroughly how the group plans to restructure its business and how this will impact the group's cost of capital, balance sheet and future dividend, along with its environmental footprint. And that's the end of the response. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question is from Susie Burnell. If we could please have the question.
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions. Question is, we are asking you today to agree to divest from fossil fuels and seek confirmation that you will reinvest in low/no carbon funds and that you have authority to do this independently from the local government pension scheme.
And the response, please.
Thank you, Chair. James Walton, Pension Fund Administrator. The response is Shropshire County Pension Fund is currently reviewing the analysis within their climate risk report being presented today following the council motion, which asks the pension committee to consider divesting from fossil fuels within a 3-year timeframe. As part of the ongoing investment strategy review, low and no carbon funds will be considered. That's the end of the response.
Thank you. The third question is from Dr. Jamie Russell on behalf of her daughter Alice Russell, aged 9, and 115 children resident in Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin. May we have the question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions. Question is, we are children of Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin. We are worried about the climate crisis. We are writing to ask a question. When will you stop funding fossil fuel companies that damage the planet and our future? Will you do it at today's meeting?
And the response, please.
Thank you, Chair. James Walton, Pension Scheme Administrator. The response is The Pension Committee is considering a detailed climate risk report at today's meeting following the recent council motion, which asked Pension Committee members to consider divesting from fossil fuel companies within a 3-year timescale. And that's the end of the response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's the end of public questions. What I propose to do is take items 5, 6 and 7 together, and we will go through the presentations, have questions, and then go through the recommendations individually at the end. So to begin with, I'd like to ask Kerry Pulaski please to introduce herself and present her particular item on the internal audit outturn report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Kerry Pulaski, Head of Audit. You've got in front of you the report, the Internal Audit Outturn for Shropshire County Pension Fund 2019-20. This is a good report, and based on the work undertaken, I can confirm that I've given a good year-end opinion on the fund's internal control environment for 2019-20. I think of particular interest to members, if I can take you to paragraph 5.6. Here you will see that we've undertaken work on the fundamental systems that back up the pension fund, and we've identified a small number of areas, minor improvements can be made, and we've not identified any significant material weaknesses that the service has control over. However, what I wanted to raise your attention to is a potential risk outside of the pension fund manager's control, and your pension fund managers are fully aware of this and raise this with the auditors, and it's in relation to the accuracy of the pension fund accounts as a result of reconciliation issues with one of the key employer systems. Pension fund staff are seeking regular updates from the identified employer for assurances on compensating controls that are currently in place, whilst the long-term solution is under implementation. In addition, as your internal auditor, we sought independent assurance on behalf of the fund, and we can confirm that the employer, there's evidence that whilst the control issues were not fully addressed, there is evidence of resources and plans in place to rectify the issue. And whilst not ideal, without these compensating controls and procedures, there would be an increased risk of the accuracy of pension payments. This is outside of the pension fund's control, but it's worthy of note. And that explains why in my year-end opinion, I mention about the assurance from the employer in respect of compensating controls. The full details of the audits are within the report. I'm not going to go through all of those, and in the appendices. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, as you say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, please, members? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to now turn to Richard Percival and Terry Tobin to please introduce themselves and present their item, which is item 6. And now this is the external audit from Grant Thornton, the audit findings for Shropshire County Pension Fund for 2019-2020. So over to Richard Percival and Terry Tobin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard Percival. I'm the engagement lead for the pension fund audit, and I'm also the engagement lead for Shropshire Council audit and Telford and Wrekin audit. Terry will talk you through our audit findings report. Before Terry speaks, I'd just like to put that report in context, in as much as the work is substantially complete. However, I can't issue my audit opinion on the pension fund until we've completed the council's audit, and the council's audit is in progress and is scheduled for completion later in October. So although we will have cleared this process today, there will be a delay until I formally issue my opinion. I just wanted members of the committee to be aware of that. So at this point, I'll hand over to Terry to talk you through the report.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Tobin, Grant Thornton, External Audit. As Richard said, we're pleased to say that we have now substantially finished the audit. There are, as always, at this stage, some items still to finish off, and we highlight these in the report. But hopefully these will be unlikely to lead to any change. It was a real achievement, as you can imagine, both for the pension fund team and our team to kind of get to this point this year with the events around. So the pension fund team had to close down the audit of close down the production of their pension fund accounts working from home, and we've had to carry out the audit remotely. In terms of the key messages that we'd like you to take away from the report, the audit's gone well. We're proposing an unqualified audit opinion, so that is good. In terms of issues that are included in the report, there were some changes to disclosure notes, and probably most notably to draw attention to the material uncertainties in some asset values at the 31st of March 2020 due to the conditions around the pandemic. And we will draw attention to this by way of what we call an emphasis of matter in our audit opinion when it's issued. Also, there were two what we call unadjusted errors. Now, what these are in relation to two particular fund managers. This is where the values of the funds, the final values of funds, weren't available while your pension fund team were closing down the account, so they had to be estimated as usual. Now, when the final figures and the final reports came in from the pension, from the fund managers for these two, the values were lower. Now, this is always the case, and we're used to reporting this every year here, but clearly because of the events around this year, the values were higher. Now, the total value of those differences was 14.1 million. So that's the accounts were overstated in their value of the total value fund by 14.1 million. Now, as these are not material, and as you can see in the report, our revised materiality is 18.3 million, there is no need to alter the accounts for this. But what we do ask you to consider is that you're happy to leave as it is, and we'd expect you to do so. And there is a statement included in the letter of representation to that effect, and that letter will be signed following this meeting. As Richard said, we can't sign off the audit opinion now until we've signed off the main council's accounts, and that will be following the audit committee at the end of October. But we have included a copy of the proposed opinion that would be included in the pension fund annual report as an appendix in our report. So this really just leaves me to thank the pension fund team for all their support this year in completing the audit under some very difficult circumstances. And I'll pause at this stage for any questions and comments.
Yes, have we any questions or comments, please, members? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Richard and Terry. Well, we'll move on to the next presentation, which is the Pension Fund Annual Accounts 2019 to 2020. Can I ask James Walton, please, to introduce himself and present this item?
Thank you, Chair. James Walton, the Pension Scheme Administrator. So, yeah, I think it's important that we do kind of take these three items together because they're so intrinsically linked. that it's difficult to consider the accounts without looking at the external and the internal audit opinions, particularly given that the recommendations within the pension fund accounts report is, as was mentioned earlier, to approve the accounts and then sign the letter of representation to Grant Thornton. So it's difficult for all of those recommendations.
James, I think you've gone on mute.
Right.
That's better. We can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I didn't do anything, Chair, but I'll continue on. So yeah, so I was just saying it's important that all three papers are considered, and then we'll go back and review each of those recommendations for each of those papers in turn. But to enable the committee to approve the accounts and to approve the signing of that letter of representation, we need to consider all of those reports together. So it's been said, the opinion that's been provided is unqualified, and as has also been said, we are waiting for the final council's full accounts, Shropshire Council's full accounts to be signed off. At the moment, we've got that in the diary for the 29th of October, so that would be the date when everything is completed. So in terms of the accounts themselves, as at the 31st of March 2020, the overall value was £1.83 billion. So this was a decrease of £84 million compared to the previous year. Now, the thing to bear in mind here, of course, is that the valuation is at a point in time, that point in time being the 31st of March, which happened to be 8 days after the lockdown in relation to COVID, and obviously with the COVID-19 outbreak over the beginning of the calendar year, that had a huge impact on markets over the end of the financial year. So while the pension fund was increasing in value over the year, that last quarter reduced the value down, and what we've then seen is the value then bounce back up following that point. But nevertheless, at the point in time on the 31st of March, the value had decreased. We've seen an increase in the number of scheme members, so that's now just short of 50,000 members. Over the year, just under £5 million worth of transfer payments were paid out of the fund to other funds, but we received in £6.5 million over that period. Over the year, we have seen management expenses increase, so they're now at 17.7 million, an increase of 3.7, but this is mainly due to additional fees around new investments that came in during the year. So the document itself is attached at the appendix. It is 150 pages long. It's a long document with lots and lots of detail in, hopefully useful and reasonably user-friendly detail. I'm not proposing to go through it now, but clearly any questions that members have in relation to the accounts, or on the back of that in relation to the external or internal audit opinions that have been provided, then quite happy to pick anything up on the back of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. Members, are there any questions, please?
Laura Hoskisson. Just to say, I don't have any specific questions. I've read through it. It's lovely to see that risks are noted and that the auditors are engaging with you to make sure that the risks are accounted for. I don't have in-depth knowledge, but it's nice to see that that is being at least looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any other questions?
Yes, Councillor Brian Williams.
Brian, yes.
It's disappointing, slightly disconcerting to see that over the last, and I'm looking now at page 20 of the report, though it's referred to on other pages as well. 20 of the report, page 58 of our papers, but 20 of the actual report. And the second paragraph, over the last 3 years, the fund returned 1.5% per annum, which was 1.2% below benchmark. And then it goes on to explain this, partly due to the fall in the market at the end of March due to COVID-19. But we're not talking about 1 year here. We're talking about an underperformance to benchmark over 3 years. And that seems to be a long time to have been willing to accept, if that's the right expression. I don't think we're willing to accept, but having to accept performance below benchmark. The query I have is that when the market falls, does the benchmark not fall in line with the market? If the benchmark's a target of, let's just assume round figures, of 10%, and the market falls by 25%, no, it's the other way around, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. If the market falls far more than the level of the benchmark, does the benchmark not fall in line with the market? We've seen, as far as I can see from this, we've a fixed benchmark, and our own performance falling in line with the market leaves us below benchmark in a way which probably doesn't reflect the quality of the investing we're actually doing. So basically, query the fact that we've underperformed benchmark over 3 years, and the query about whether the benchmark is fixed or falls or should fall in line with the market. Over.
Okay, thank you, Brian, very much for that very technical question. Who would like to have a go at answering that from the officers?
I can take that, Chair. Justin Bridges, thank you. Head of Treasury and Pensions, Shropshire Council. Yes, you're correct, Brian, that the benchmark does fall. You've picked on the 3-year performance numbers. Yes, I accept that they are below benchmark. That's due to underperformance from some of our managers. But I'd like to draw your attention to later on in the report when it gives the longer term investment performance of the fund over a 5- and 10-year period, and we have been outperforming the benchmark, especially over 10 years. There's a graph in the annual report to show the fund's performance over the longer term, and that has been significantly outperforming the benchmark over that period. So obviously the shorter term performance has been impacted more recently by COVID, but the longer term performance of the fund is still very positive.
Thank you very much for that, Justin. Any other questions?
Yes, please, Chair. Chris Mellings, Councillor Chris Mellings. Two questions. Firstly, around note 9 on page 89 of the report pack, which is in relation to investment income. Whilst overall compared to the previous year, investment income was up overall. Dividends from equities was down about 2.5 million, and I just wonder what the reason for that was. Obviously, coming into this year with COVID, etc., and the various reports about falls in equity dividends, I just wonder if we're able to make an assessment of what our income is likely to be for this year. Then of the 28 million, virtually half, or exactly half of it comes from what is termed other. Just useful to know what items are within that. And then finally, obviously the annual report has been approved today, and I appreciate it's going to be published on the website, etc. In normal times, there would be an AGM for the pension fund and for members, and I just wonder what arrangements are being made this year for an AGM, if indeed one is to take place with everything that is happening. I wonder whether the intention is to run some form of virtual AGM or whether one won't take place this year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Some very good questions there. Justin, do you want to have a go at answering?
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions. Yeah, there's quite a lot of questions there, Chris. I'll need to come back to you on the exact detail of that. We have got detailed working papers around investment income and the reasons what's included and what isn't included. So if you don't mind, I will come back to you with a response to those questions.
That's fine, thank you.
And with regards to the AGM, yes, there is a date in the diary for this year. It is the end of November, but obviously things are a lot different, as you say, because of COVID and virtual meetings this year. So we're in early discussions, myself, James, Director of Finance, and Debbie, Pensions Administration Manager, how that event's going to work this year. So we'll be able to provide an update probably to you later on, but we don't know how it's going to work at this precise moment in time.
Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? No. Well, in that case, we'll go back to the recommendations in the individual reports. We'll start with item 5, the internal audit outturn report for Shropshire County Pension Fund 2019 to 2020. The committee are asked to consider and endorse with appropriate comment: A, performance against the audit plan for the year ended 31st of March 2020. B, the head of audit's good year-end opinion on the fund's internal control environment for 2019-20 is based on the work undertaken. Assurance from the employer in respect of compensating controls within their financial reconciliation systems, whilst a long-term solution is delivered and pension fund management responses received. Can I please have a proposer first?
Yes, Brian Williams.
Thank you, and a second.
Hang on a minute. I'd like to propose this and make the comment that appears on page 5 in relation to page 517, item 517 on page 12 of our report. Of the 12 recommendations made, all were rated as requires attention, designed to add value to the high level of controls in place. It is very comforting indeed when the recommendations don't relate to some deficiency in the particular operation, but when the recommendations are all to add value to the already high level of controls. It's very impressive, and I was delighted to read the whole report, which is very reassuring, and pleased to propose we adopt the report with thanks to Kerry and the audit team.
Thank you, Brian. Can I have a seconder, please?
Chris Mellings, happy to second.
Thank you very much. I will now accept the recommendation as set out in the report unless anyone else indicates differently. So that is accepted. Moving on to the external audit, the audit findings for Shropshire County Pension Fund 2019 to 2020. Can I please have a proposer for the report?
Move it, Tom.
Hello.
Seconder?
Yes, I'll second. Brian Williams.
Okay. And again, I'll now accept the recommendation unless anyone else indicates differently. So that's accepted. Very good. And then item 7, the Pensions Fund Annual Accounts 2019 to 2020. The committee is asked to approve the Pension Fund Annual Report. The committee is asked to approve that the Chair and Director of Finance, Governance and Assurance sign the letter of representation for Grant Thornton. Can I please have a proposer?
Yes, Chair. Chris Mellings, I'll move the recommendations.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Yeah, Brian Williams. Yes, I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much. I will now accept the recommendation as set out in the report unless anyone else indicates differently. So they are accepted. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 8, which is pensions administration monitoring. Can Debbie Sharp please introduce herself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Debbie Sharp, Pensions Administration Manager. The report covers the last quarter of work being undertaken and what's happening in the regulation area for pensions administration of the local government pension scheme. It's interesting, I'm just going to point out a couple of points that are covered in the report. Our statistics are looking that the take-up of online activity as for active members is nearly at 50%. So I think the push that we've had over the last few years in that respect is showing that members are being more actively engaged online. We will never expect 100% people online, so we also still offer paper formats. People can do, well, they used to be able to do online visits, and they will be able to shortly through the council's drop-in centres. And so we're still working on uptake of online activity. The employers meeting for the employers within the fund is going to be on the 21st of October. My apologies, Chris, I could have put in the report that about the meeting, the annual meeting being at the moment proposed for the 27th of November. But at the moment we are just looking at how we're going to deal with that, as that will have a wider, usually a wider number of people that want to attend, and with our external presenters. So we are working on that, and we'll give a further update nearer the time. The annual benefit statements, one of the statutory requirements of the administration team to ensure that a statement for all our active and deferred members has been produced by the end of August. We're all done and are all available online for our membership. The annual benefit statements coming out from that, anybody whose pension has grown very close to or more than the HMRC allowances have all been written to as well. So the pension saving statements that we have to send out have gone out well in time of the October deadline. We're also offering, you'll see in the report there, that we're offering sort of education and training through our Actuaries Mercer for the members to come and learn a bit more about this area. As the Revenue and Customs reduce the amounts that people can put into their pensions and still get tax advantages, more people are getting caught with tax bills. So the education is being ramped up to ensure that the membership have as much information as possible to keep an eye on this area. The employers' performance, point 7 there on my report, we've been working with the employers to ensure that they're actually complying with the legislation around when they have to send us information, contributions, data on all of the members. There was an improvement sort of over the summer, so we're hoping that we can continue that, and the education sessions are working. The exit payment cap, you may have seen in the news over the last 5 years that the government has been looking to restrict exit payments in the public sector to £95,000. It went on the back burner over the last sort of year or so, but activity has just ramped up. There's a consultation come out to introduce this by the end of this year, early next year. And this just means that the pension scheme legislation will need to change in the local government pension area as well, because at the moment, if someone's over age 55 and is made redundant by certain employers, well, if they're made 55 and made redundant, their local government pension scheme benefits are payable and reduced. This exit payment cap legislation for certain employers in our fund just means that that can't happen going forward, and that their exit payments need to be taken into account, and they won't be able to have a fully unreduced benefit from us. But to ensure that happens, we need local government pension scheme legislation changing as well. At the moment, we haven't had that part, so we don't know exactly how we are going to comply with this, but we have been promised that it will come shortly. So we'll just keep an eye on that, and we'll be able to give you an update in the December meeting. We've also had legislation around regulation changes for exiting employers. So if an employer leaves the local government pension scheme, mainly those will be contractors who have been running service contracts for our employers. those service contracts will have been let to somebody else. When they exit, there are either a payment from them to the fund, or if they're in surplus, we have to make a payment back to them. There's regulations around that being tightened up, and also around reviewing employer contributions between valuations. So you'll see at 12.2, there's the reasons there why we would perhaps want to change an employer's contribution rate. At the present, we can't do that. The regulations set during valuation time that the contribution that the actuary certifies is in place for 3 years. These regulations are going to mean we can change partway through the valuation period. And then at 13, the biggest thing that's probably happened to our pension scheme since the 2014 regulation changes, we've got the McLeod case, McLeod and Sargent. The unlawful discrimination has been found in the public sector schemes. Our scheme changed back in 2014. There were some underpins for older members of the pension fund, and that's been deemed to be discriminatory. So the underpin legislation and the draft consultation that's in at the moment is looking to open out that underpin to all members of the pension scheme who were in the pension scheme back in 2012 and were still in it after 2014 when it changed to a career average pension scheme. That just means that in 2022, when the legislation comes into place, we have to recalculate all of the benefits that have been calculated between 2014 and 2022 to ensure anybody who should have had this underpin, that the benefits that they've had either as a deferred member, a pensioner, any death benefits that have been paid, any transfers will all need to be recalculated. And then going forward from 2022, for all of the active members being covered by this underpin, the calculation will need to change going forward, that we check that whether the underpin gives them a bigger benefit in the final salary scheme for that 8 years of service, or whether the career average gave them a better benefit. And I'm quite happy to take questions on the report.
Thank you, Debbie, very much. Any questions, please?
Yeah, Brian Williams here. Thank you, Debbie, for the report. The report does illustrate, and you have expanded on it in a way which helps us greatly. The report does illustrate the challenges that are facing the team over the next 2 or 3 years due to changes in the law and the procedures for the administration of pensions. I just hope that the team is sufficiently well resourced in numbers. It's sufficiently well resourced in capability at the moment, but I hope it's sufficiently well resourced in numbers to cope with the administration that's going to fall upon you in the next 2 or 3 years. With those comments, I'm happy indeed to move the report and hope that Chris will be seconding.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members for Debbie? No. Well, in that case, Brian's proposed. Can I have a seconder, please?
Chris Mellings, happy to take the cue from Brian. I'm happy to second.
Okay, and we're firstly accepting the position set out in the report, and secondly, we note the additional costs that will be incurred because of the McLeod extension to the statutory underpin. I will now accept those recommendations as set out in the report unless anybody indicates differently. In that case, we accept the recommendations. Thank you very much, and thank you, Debbie, particularly for the report. We now move on to item 9, which is the climate risk update. And can Michael Marshall present this item, please, from LGPS Central?
Thank you, Chair. May I just check that you can hear me?
We can.
Excellent. This is Michael Marshall I'm Director of Responsible Investment and Engagement at LGPS Central. And a few months ago, we were commissioned by Shropshire County Pension Fund to provide a report to the pension fund, which is a climate risk report. The scope of this report, as has been communicated publicly in the past, is to look at the extent to which the fund has exposure to climate-related risks. And these are financially material climate-related risks. So whether the fund could experience some impact on its risk or its return expectations as a result of climate change or changing climate policies, and whether there are strategies the fund could undertake to manage these risks over the long term. So we have been preparing that report, and that report will be provided to the Pensions Committee in the exempt section, private section of today's meeting. And the reason that the report is provided in the exempt or private section of the meeting is that our report draws on certain models and databases that come from third parties. These third parties have spent lots of money developing their intellectual property, and we have to license the products from them, and we are not permitted to publish their intellectual property in public. We have to respect those licenses. That's part of our contractual agreement with them. And so the report is provided to the committee in the exempt section of today's meeting. That's my report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I will now ask members of the committee for their comments, if you have any to make.
Laura
Yes.
Hoskinson.
Oh, sorry.
Laura, yes, please.
Hello, I understand the reasons why it has to be in the private section and certainly no details. Is there any summary that you could give the public who are possibly listening in at the moment that doesn't infringe any of those rights?
Michael, can you respond, please?
I can't give any comment on the findings of the report in public now, but there is a possibility for the fund to commission a future report from us that does exactly that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Chair, just to follow that up in support of Laura's question and comment. Clearly, this is a big issue, not only for the pension fund, but much wider afield as well. And there's a lot of interest in the issue, particularly as regards the Shropshire perspective. So I would encourage us the opportunity to share any outcomes or perspectives or decisions that the pension fund pension committee may take on this, simply in terms of the engagement that we've had over recent months from the public and fund members, and for transparency purposes as well. I fully understand the need to protect the sort of position, but I think we do need to find some way of engaging with the public, given the keen level of interest that there is. Not only, I know the specific focus of late has been around the issue of investment in the fossil fuel sector, but obviously climate change goes beyond that as well. So if we can find that opportunity to share wider or have some discussions in a wider forum that is open to the public to witness that or contribute to that, I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Chris.
Councillor Brian Williams, can I support Chris and Laura on what they have said? I understand the technicalities, I understand the legalities, why this can't be published. The difficulty is that it puts the council in a difficult light in relation to all those people who, and the thousands and thousands of them, who are concerned about climate change. It makes us look, for whatever reason, as though we're trying to keep the matter under the counter. I'm concerned about the image of the council and the image of this pensioners organisation, and do support Chris and Laura heartily in hoping that we can publish at the earliest possible moment some synopsis of the report we're going to consider later on in the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chair,
Brian?
can I just second that from a Telford and Wrekin point of view? Thank you, the three speakers who've made that point, and Telford and Wrekin would back that as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments or questions? No. Okay. Thank you all for that contribution. We'll now move to item 10, corporate governance monitoring. Can Justin Bridges introduce himself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Justin Bridges, Head of Treasury and Pensions. This is the routine quarterly corporate governance monitoring report, and it provides details of all the voting carried out by the managers at annual meetings during the last quarter to the 30th of June 2020. It also provides an update of the engagement from BMO with the UK companies that the funds invest in. And I'm happy to take any questions on the report, but it's just a note.
Are there any questions, members? The recommendation is to accept the position as set out in the report. Please, can I have a proposer? Proposer, please.
Oh, go on, somebody else propose. It seems to be Chris and myself that are doing, trying to seize the limelight.
Yes, okay, well, I propose.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
Evans.
And the seconder, please.
Well, if you must, you must.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I will now accept the recommendation to accept the position as set out in the report unless anyone else indicates differently. So the recommendation is accepted. Thank you all for that. We now move to item 11, the exclusion of press and public. I move that under paragraph 10.2 of the Council's access to information procedure rules, that the proceedings of the committee in relation to the following agenda items shall not be conducted in public on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the categories specified against them. We will now take a vote. The committee officer will read out the names of the committee members present and entitled to vote on this item and then confirm the result of the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tom Biggins.
For.
Councillor Chris Mellins.
Reluctantly, as regards item 13, which is the climate risk report, for.
Councillor Brian Williams.
Brian, can you hear?
Sorry, for.
Councillor Ray Evans.
For.
Councillor Malcolm Smith.
For.
Thank you all very much for that. I confirm that resolution has been confirmed. So that now concludes the live